Okay, so we are talking about module 1. Now, this module basically has 4 parts to it, right? So the first part is basically the entire module is talking about the principles of Krishna consciousness. And the first module, the first part of this module is talking about the foundations of Krishna conscious philosophy. And that's so. Let's go. So what will we learn in this first part? We'll learn about the 4 defects of the conditioned soul. How do we attain the spiritual knowledge? How do we develop faith, karma, the 3 modes of material nature, the 3 aspects of the absolute truth, the 3 energies of the Lord, Maya, reincarnation, and transmigration of the soul. This is actually the entire module 2, that right? But now, initially when this was being offered, we said, oh, this is all great content, but it's a little too heavy, right? And so doing this in one session, because sometimes we generate good discussion also around these topics, so it would be a good idea to segregate them, right? So that's why we divided this in different parts. Okay, so you can watch the message from Guru Maharaj.
Welcome to Bhakti Jumpstart, module number 2.
Move it forward. Okay, so again, like the previous module, you're going to complete a quiz and personal reflections at the end of this module. Okay, so part 1 is the 4 defects of the conditioned soul. So we are, what do we mean by this? So we are conditioned soul living in the material world, right? With that, and what is the conditioning? Basically, when we talk about the word conditioning, it reminds me of the first time. Does anybody remember where you've heard the word conditioning and what does the word conditioning mean? Let's open that for discussion. You can raise your hand or unmute yourself.
I think in Prabhupada's writing.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Mataji.
You are talking to me, Prabhu?
No. Yes, yeah. So what does the word condition mean?
I think, condition means our senses are defective and normally we, nothing cooperates with us. The mind doesn't cooperate. And we are kind of disillusioned.
Sure, those are the defects. But I want to even take a step back to understand what does the word conditioning mean? Where does the word conditioning comes from? Okay, so that's okay. Let me let's go to the roots of the basics for this one. And
can I give a try maybe?
Sure, go ahead.
Is it like condition means is it a set of rules or something where you have to work in that perimeter or whatever?
The set of rules, sure. So there is basically the word conditioning means the process of modifying a person or animal's behavior. Is that okay? So that is what conditioning means. Okay. So we are being conditioned by something, right? And so the common experiment has anybody heard of a Russian psychologist or scientist? I think he was Pavlov. Someone might have heard of that name.
Pavlov's pouch, yes.
So Pavlov was a Russian, I think he was a scientist, but I don't know whether he was a psychologist or as well or not. But so he was a Russian scientist, and what he did was he was trying to train a dog. Okay. So every time he would give the food to the dog, he would ring a bell. Okay. So he was pairing 2 stimuli, plural. So the first stimulus was the food, and the second stimulus was the ringing of the bell with that, right? And so each time the food was presented or given to the dog, the bell was rung, okay, and that. And so once the dog started associating these two stimuli together, that one comes with that, the other one. Then what he did, a smart scientist, he did not give the food. I mean, he did not give the food, but he only rang the bell. Okay, so now the dog in his mind had this thing that he connected these two stimuli together, right? So every time the bell rings, the food is given with that, right? So he thought that there's food. And so when the dog comes, he shows up, there's no food with that, right? And so with that, there is, but he starts salivating in anticipation or expectation of the food with that, right? So he's drooling and salivating with that. And so this is what is conditioning. So even now the dog was able to pair the two stimuli together and was not able to separate them. And so he thought that, okay, whenever the bell rings, I get the food as well with that, right? So this process is called conditioning, where we can train someone's behavior over time, and and we can, we develop that habit or that behavior. That's right. So that's what in classic psychology literature, these are talked about in that. So how does it apply here? Now we are conditioned souls as well, right, in the material world. From that. And so what is the conditioning? How has our behavior been associated by the conditioning that we are living in this world? Because we know that once we are with Krishna in the spiritual world, then we don't have these defects or conditioning, that we are only thinking to serve Krishna, because the inherent nature of the soul is to live with Krishna in harmony and serve Krishna with that, right? That's just Anand, that perspective. And so now here we are talking about what has happened to us when we come in the material world and how that conditioning has affected that, right? So there are basically 4 defects that the material world has conditioned us or adulterated or polluted us, basically. And these are that we commit mistakes with that, right? So Brahma, to err is human. I eat too much, I forget words from a shloka, I succumb to lust. So this is human nature, right? We always, to err is human. We always say, oh yeah, I'm a human, I make mistakes and that, right? And so please forgive me. We say all the time, right? That thing. And so that is a defect of the conditioned soul. That. The next one is the easily illusion or pramada, accepting something as real when it is not. Coiled rope is believed to be a snake. I'm tall and beautiful. When I will be a millionaire, I will be happy, right? We always are like, okay, yeah, when I get this done, then I'll be happy. And of course, after that, something else will come. Then that will happen. And then after that, oh, then I'll be happy. Then something else problem will come with that. So we're always in this illusion that if I get this immediate thing that I want, then I will become happy and contented. But the content never is there. That's right. That is the problem in the material world, and that is the reason why the conditioned soul has this defect. The third one is imperfect senses. Karana patva. Senses are limited and misled. I cannot see through walls. I cannot hear what's happening a million miles away. Right. So we have limited senses, right? We can only perceive things that our nervous system through these senses are touch, hearing, smell, taste, and vision, right? These are the 5 senses, is that right? And so these senses, based on what we have, is what we can observe with that, right? And so, there are so many instances, like if there is what are those things that there was this phenomena in Alaska, right? That I believe there recently, a few months ago, they were saying that, oh, you could see those lights here, northern lights or something like that, right? In the US, they were saying that you could see it, right? But some people saw it, some did not see it with that, right? But majority didn't see it. And so that is like an example of we wanted it, but we couldn't, right? There's this cloud, and so that's an imperfect sense. If there's a Halley's Comet going right from the sky, and everybody wants to see it, but it's very difficult to see because they're like moving at such a fast pace. The speed is so fast, and our senses cannot grasp that, right? We're limited with that, right? And so this is one of the reasons bringing it to Shastra is also like Krishna has so many opulences, right? 64 opulences. And we say, oh, how is Krishna able to do this at one time? And at the same time, he's doing this also, right? With that. And so that is because we cannot understand because we have limited knowledge and our senses are imperfect. We have limited senses with that, right? And so they are always misleading us with that. The next one is the tendency to cheat, or vipralipsa, posing as an authority or a guru, posing as one who has complete knowledge of the absolute truth. This is, of course, this is very common in the material world. Everybody wants to have the sense of control, right? Parents want to have sense of control over their children. Of course, to some extent, it's good. And then like you'll see, like everybody wants to gain that attraction. That's right. Okay, I need to be acknowledged for this. I did this because of me, and this happened. Did this. I am the person who did this, right? So I need that gratification. So that sense of control is always there, and because we have that ability that we want to do that sense of control, we often end up cheating people for that. We often end up telling lie. If I want this control, this is how I need to manipulate the situation or this other person. So I get that gratification and I get that control for that, right? So these are the 4 defects of the condition. So in the reflection question, there's a very nice question for this, which will actually force us to think a little deeper. So I'm not leaking that right now. Yes, to keep the suspense, because I want to think more like deeply as we go into this. But any questions on this one? Yes, Masaji.
Probably just tell a bit more about. I know you said you gave an example of the coil rope as a snake for easily illusions. Are there any other examples?
Easily illusion. So remember the which chapter is in the Bhagavad Gita?
And also about the vipralipsa.
Vipralipsa, a tendency to cheat, right? Yeah. So because we want to have this sense of authority or control in order to gain reputation with that, right?
Yeah.
We will do whatever is in our interest to gain that reputation and fame, and to be on that top position, we will cheat. That, right? That's often there, isn't it?
But not like what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, like obviously he would ask everyone to do prachar about Krishna consciousness. I mean, normally you would think like only a spiritual leader would do the prachar. But if we do the prachar, does it come under vipralipsa or not?
No. That is not. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that every town and every village should have the Krishna consciousness, right? We need to preach that. So every person can become a guru with that. But we learned in the previous module what you need to have very strict qualities, right, to become a guru with that, right? That doesn't mean that we only can preach when you are a guru, that, right? So this entire process of book distribution is that, right? Yeah, even if whatever you know, in your limited knowledge also, but as long as the knowledge that you're sharing is truth, right? That's fine.
Yes.
That's not tendency to cheat, right? That, yeah. Tendency to cheat is coming where you're like, okay, I want to be the controller. So, I mean, oftentimes you see this example, not often, but sometimes I've seen in some organizations where somebody wants to become on the top, right? Come to the higher position, and they they won't share the secrets with their colleagues how to get there with that, right? Even though they may have been like they know all of those secrets, but they're like, if I give it to this person, then they are not going to be able to be successful, right?
So they're not being honest
become,
then.
yeah. So then they cheat. They're cheating there, right? Basically, because they're like, I want to help them, but purposefully they will bring obstacles in other people, or they will manipulate the information in such a way that the other person like gets hindered with that, or they cheat that person. So because we want to have that authority, we want that fame, we want that reputation, we want that status, right? With that. So that I think is one of the reasons that because of that, like the people, we have this tendency because we're conditioned. Our soul is pure, but because being in the material world, it has been conditioned with this, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Anyone else has any example of this you can think?
Prabhu.
Yes,
Prabhu. Yeah, I think it is also learned from the beginning of our childhood. We always want to take credit. Something is echoing, Prabhu.
I think I'm able to hear you properly. Everybody able to hear? There's no echo.
Oh, is it? Okay. See, I can hear now. Prabhu, from childhood, what I was saying was, we have our parents have a tendency to ask us to do the best. Sometimes we may take different ways to, to take the control or try like a white lies or something to get that position.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So we are conditioned that way,
yes.
Right? Yeah, because our environment through our parents or our upbringing and general tendency to since a lot of us are from India, and this example applies to in that situation. So India is the number one country that has the largest population, right? So that billion, right? More than billion at this point now. So there is this concept of Darwin's theory of survival of the fittest, right? So in order to exceed and get something and achieve something, you really need to strive hard, right? With that, right? So I remember when I was growing up in India, I had to take this after my 12th grade, 12th standard. You take these exams to get into medical school or engineering school with that, right? And they're only limited seats because the population is so much. You cannot they cannot bring everybody, right? Compared to US or UK, other places, it's a different system. There are more opportunities, more schools, and more seats available with that, right? But the population is less there here, right, in the Western world. And so what the same thing happens there, right? Okay, I need to get first. I need to do this. So I am going to cheat at it. I'm going to tell whatever lies they're going to come in my way, but I need to get there. I would not let others, because I have to seek for myself that I need to exceed in that, right? Yeah. So the environment forced me to do that, right? Even though I would have wanted. So that is the conditioning. The environment conditioned it in the same way how the bell was given, and so the dog started salivating, right? So that. So Kanya Mataji, go ahead.
Yes, Prabhuji. I would like to add on what Vatsala Mataji told. Actually, the way our parents condition, it is something very stays with us very closely, and that is something I started more observing more when I am doing the same for my daughter. And I feels like it's not that I wantedly want to do it, but it's just part of upbringing. But every single thing conditions them so quickly, like they very quickly understand this is bad, this is not good, or this is good. And that is something I can realizing more and more after reading Prabhupada's books, that we do it at such an
Yes.
early age, we don't even realize. And the same thing has happened to
Yes.
us. So,
Yep. Yeah, it is part of the subconscious, right? It becomes part of subconscious with that very quickly with that, right? So like now when you see like infants who are 1 year less or even between 1 and 2 years, they're so crazy for smartphones, right? With that, right? You can probably relate, people who have young children or must have seen their nephews, nieces, or grandchildren here, and like, so you know how you have this, they're wanting that stimulus with that, and they know how to manipulate their parents or grandparents to give that, right? So that is another example of conditioning right there in that, right? And so the parents get conditioned also with that, right? I need to feed my child, so I should give this stimulus with that, right? So okay. The last one, you wanted an example of easily illusion, right? Pramada with that. So this is we can look at the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, right? The first verse of Bhagavad Gita. Actually, let's open it here on Veda base. Okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Is that right? The second one, the branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive action of human society. So this is an example of illusion, right? So there is this upward tree. I mean, there's a tree, but that is, of course, in the spiritual world. But the illusion of that is that it's downward, right? Like a mirage. That, right? That you see, oh, there's water in the desert, but there's actually no water there. So that, right? And so that is the illusion, and that is called as the material world, right? The material nature. That, right? Oh, everything, it looks good and rosy and nice, but we have all this conditioning and defects in this material world. With that, right? So that's a classic example here for the illusion with that, right? Pramada with that. Okay. That makes sense? Can we move forward? Okay. All right. Next slide. So, what impact do these four defects have? I think we mostly talked about this. A common man with all the four defects of human frailty is unable to teach that which is worth hearing. These four principal defects in the conditioned life disqualify one from putting forth rules and regulations. With that, right? So this concept of dharma, where we want to do things based on rules, with that, right? We don't follow that because as we said, we have the tendency to cheat. We are in this illusion that everything is fine, and our senses are not perfect. So we cannot dissociate what is good. Often it is a challenge for us to dissociate what is good from what is bad. That, right? And so that's why these senses cloud us, and it's hard to dissociate and like what needs to be done righteously and what is not supposed to be done righteously. Is that right? So perfect knowledge comes from those who are in the disciplic succession and are free from these four defects. Is that right? Which is a very hard process to do because it's very hard to remove the we can think of an example of an onion, right? And like how you have to peel the layers of the onion with that each time. So like the actual, the truth soul, like without any conditions, that clear, pure soul is in between. But we have all these layers on top of that have become our condition, and so we are not able to do righteous things with that, right? And so are not able to dissociate good from bad often, and don't make good decisions based off of that. And so we have to gradually remove that, and the process that is going to come through is by perfect knowledge under the shelter of a guru with that. Okay. How does one transcend these 4 defects? If one carries out the order of a spiritual master, as we said, that you under the shiksha of a guru, you can do this. Following the words spoken by the Lord are called apurushaya, meaning that they are different from words spoken by a person of the mundane world, who is infected with 4 defects, right? So the purush means person, right? A regular person, but apurusha means a person. He's not a regular person, that's right. And so God, of course, we know is not a regular person, and so the knowledge that we are learning is directly spoken by the God and is now preached through the disciplic succession. So once we hear that, then there is an opportunity to overcome these defects. That okay. The material, this is a quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi. The material Brahma Pramada Vipralipsa Karana Patva Ishware Vyakye Nahi Dosha E Sabha. The material defects or mistakes, illusions, cheating, and sensory insufficiency do not exist in the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's right. And so that's why we need to go to find the source of the real knowledge through the disciplic succession. That's why we are here learning this. Okay, so we've done the aspect of 4 conditions, 4 defects of the condition. So now we're going to move to the second part in this. We're still in part 1, attaining spiritual knowledge. Okay, so 4 methods of acquiring knowledge. It is important to understand how we attain the knowledge in one's pursuit of pure devotional service. So this, we establish a basis of knowledge through various methods known as epistemology, which means the theory of knowledge, especially regarding its method, validity, and scope. Epistemology is the investigation of what distinguishes justified belief from opinion. So let's go in a little further in the slides and it will become clearer. So these 4 methods of acquiring knowledge are Pratyaksha, Anumana, Athya, and Shabda. Pratyaksha is direct sense perception through the 5 senses, right? That okay. So these 2 words I would like to uncouple: sense, perception. So sense is the first word, and the second word is the perception. So let me give you an example. So the when we I believe most people here must have experienced very cold temperature. Like we have Mataji from UK here, others are I think mostly from North America, and so we'll use Celsius and Fahrenheit both temperatures here. So 0 degrees Celsius, for example, right, is about 32 degrees Fahrenheit, right, and so it's cold, right? It's cold temperature with that. So how do we first feel that? The temperature, that it is cold. Okay. So you step out.
Yeah.
Right. You step out, and then there are these receptors or sense organs on our skin. That's right. And those basically tell us that that they can feel, right, that the temperature is cold. These are called thermoreceptors, and so these can feel what is the temperature. They're supposed to detect the temperature if it is too hot or cold. Is that right? So now, that is the first part. That is the sensing part. Okay. Now, the perception part is when you attach a meaning to the sensation. Is that right? So that is the perception. Okay. And so, in that one, now what oftentimes what happens, so I give another example. So the first time I moved to the United States, this was 20 years ago, and I moved to the state of Wisconsin, which is very close, cold, like it's up north, above Illinois, above Chicago. And so very cold, right? And so the temperature in Celsius, of course, at that time I'd come from India, and I was still confused about this whole Fahrenheit thing. And even till date, I have to use Celsius for my brain to actually feel the perception of the temperature, right? With that, right? And so, because that is how I'm brought up, upbringing, I'm conditioned that way, right? So, from my childhood. So the first time I remember, this was December or January, it was cold, and but the sun was bright. It was very nice day with like bright sunshine. And I'm like, I didn't check my, we had we did not have smartphones at that time, but of course on the computer I could have checked the temperature, and but I didn't check it. I just went like with a little jacket on and like a small jacket, and I stepped outside my apartment. 2 steps I took, I came back running in the apartment. It is really cold. That's right. So this was a false perception, right? That, oh, the sun is shining outside and coming from India. I'm like, oh, whenever there is nice sun outside, you would think that it's warm, right? I don't need to wear so many warm clothes with that. I need to layer up with all of these clothes. So that is the perception, right? And so when I came back inside, the thermoreceptors on my skin picked that up, and now I had to do something with that, right? And so that idea of what you do with once you feel the senses is called perception with that, right? So that ability to act, and that happens, or that comes that comes from the mind. Okay, so the mind is the one which is telling me, right? Okay, I need to go back inside the apartment and I need to wear more clothes with that, right? And so with that, right? And so I'm sure it has happened to all of us at some point, right? This experience with that. And so then so that ability is perception. So senses is what is the skin is sensing, or the eyes are seeing, or what we are hearing, or what we're smelling with that, right? Or what we're tasting. But when you attach a meaning to that to produce an action, that process is called as perception with that, okay? So we acquire knowledge through that first process of pratiksha with that, right? So we hear, we are hearing something, and then we attach a meaning to it, right? So you're hearing a lecture from Guru Maharaj or somebody, and then you attach a meaning to that, and then you start thinking, this is how I'm going to apply to in my life. That is this process of pratiksha. Hearing, sensing, and then perception is attaching a meaning to that and acting on it, right? Producing an outcome, okay? That's the second is the anumana, or the mental reasoning. So basically, anuman in the word in Hindi means guessing with that, right? Or speculation with that. And so that is the mental reasoning with that. Okay, I'm guessing, I'm mentally reasoning that whole, this is how I heard it, and now I have to reason with it. Or even if I didn't hear it, I'm given a situation and I'm trying to see, okay, how do I need to figure this out? How do I need to solve this problem with that, right? That is that mental reasoning through guesswork or trial and error also with that, right? The next one is athya, which is historical understanding. So you are reading, right, you're hearing from the, not hearing, you read from the books, like historical texts from that perspective. So that's how we also acquire knowledge, right? Okay, from the textbooks that are in the school. And the fourth is the shabda, or the authoritative testimony. So sound hearing from higher authority. Is that right? So persons like Guru Maharaj, who is from a disciplic succession, parampara, You're hearing their authority from them, from the authorities. That's the Shabda. So 4 of these. First one is the senses, the Prataksha. Second is the Anumana. Third is the Aitya. And fourth is the Shabda. That's right. Of these 4, understanding from the Vedic scriptures, which are the sound representative of the absolute truth, is the best method. The traditional Vedic students accept understanding through sound to be the best. Now, why do you think this is the best method? Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Prabhu, so it is written in the scriptures that Krishna was the first person who actually gave this knowledge to Brahma, and the same thing was done on the battlefield of Kurukshetra to Arjuna, and that was done by the same method of Shabda when the Lord spoke the truth. So we can take that as the ultimate process of learning, because that was the only way in which the Lord taught to their disciples.
Okay. Good. Let's add a little more to this because I want to perk your brain. So when you see that question next time or the next time after when we do it, we'll talk about it. Go ahead, Tim Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam. If you want to gain knowledge, it will save you a lot of time by taking this method. For example, if someone wanted to find out who his father was, and Srila Prabhupada uses this example a lot, you just ask your mother, and your mother will tell you who your father is. Instead of going through the streets and asking every single person who their father is, you just take it from a higher source, a authoritative source, and then it will save you a lot of time. Or you get one more example is if you want to find out if man is mortal, you just ask a doctor, someone who has the knowledge, instead of going to every single person and seeing if they're immortal, if someone is. Those are 2 examples that Prabhupada uses.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah. How do you relate to what you? Let me give you a hint. How do you relate to what you learned? Let me give this hint first. And then I'll ask you, Mataji. So how do you relate what you learned from here with the previous topic that we talked about, the defect in this condition? So yes, go ahead, Mamta Mataji.
I don't know, I'm just thinking that because the Guru Parampara system which we go, and with the Shabda we hear, and we don't, so that we don't get adulterated with other some mundane talk. And so by hearing, so that becomes more important, like the Shabda is just by hearing. Brings so much of echo.
Yes, that is part of it. Okay, let me give another way. Out of these 4, right? Now that we're talking about out of these 4, which one you think is the best method? Of course, Shabda, right?
Yeah.
That we already told here. But we have to see that why are these 2 not perfect, for example?
Well, for Pratyaksha, obviously, because you're not, our senses are not perfect. And so we can't, because we can see, but we can't, whether we hear, they're all conditioned over there, of course, but with the senses are not perfect. That's what I think with Pratyaksha. And with Anumana, your mind obviously doesn't reason out properly. Under stress, it can reason out differently. So Anumana is not perfect. And Itihasa is like history is only written by some people depending upon what, I don't know, because how their perception was, which could be conditioned maybe. I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah. No,
because if you go, and this Shabda, I mean, we could always say that Vyasadeva also, we're going with the books what we have, because we are going with, but with and also we did say about, I think you mentioned about how the culture develops, of doing things by hearing, then people develop those cultures. I don't know whether I'm mixing with something else. But it's the
No, this is good. You
by
mentioned
hearing,
correctly.
because sometimes we are not this. You did say also something which was not there before. How are we following the same principles? It's only by hearsay and also by following the religious things that we know that that particular thing happened at that particular time, because we were not there in the past, but we're still following the same principles, and that could only come forward through the shabda or through following. I don't know. I'm so sorry. Maybe I'm mixing it up.
No, you're fine. I think so. This is good. So let's to wrap this up. Direct sense perception of pratyaksha is we have defective senses. We already learned that, right? Just now. So we cannot rely on that. Anuman, mental reasoning, like our brain cannot process a lot of things with that, right? Beyond knowledge. Like, as I said, we cannot understand how Krishna could do so many leelas at the same time, right? His opulences. So that's part of the Anumana. Athya, a lot of history, or Etihasa, which is history, a lot of things are concocted, right? So, like, you see history, like people, without being so political or any of that, we know that, like, just in front of a real example here, last time when the US election happened and one party did not win, their party became so agitated they said people were lying, right? I mean, people were cheating, and the other party became winner based on the by cheating and all of that, right? And it has been proven in the U.S. courts that it is all lies. With that, right? But they created a history by concocting, right? All of these things with that, and so it is hard to believe this history from in some instances as well. So, but the only perfect way is this. This is a question in the reflection question. Okay, so we discussed it today. Make sure this is there. If you write some things around this, it's going to be useful when you answer that question. Okay. So how they connect these two together. All right, so this is again some part of this. We're going to skip this because I think we had a good discussion around this. You can, yes, go ahead.
So how is Shabda then the most important? I didn't get that.
Because it is coming from the source, who is Krishna,
Okay.
and through the disciplic succession parampara. Is that right? That, yeah. And so the information is not adulterated, right? That or concocted.
Yeah.
With that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this ends the first part of the foundations of Krishna conscious philosophy. Okay, any questions on that? I think we had a good discussion on this. We'll try to cover the second part also today. So the second one is developing faith. So what is faith? Shraddha Sabde Vishwasa Kahe Sudra Nishtaya Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Krita Hoye. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela. Shraddha is confident, firm faith that by rendering transcendental loving service to Krishna, one automatically performs all subsidiary activities. Such faith is favorable to the discharge of devotional service. Shraddha is or the faith in Krishna is the beginning of Krishna consciousness. Faith means strong faith. The words of Bhagavad Gita are authoritative instructions for faithful men, and whatever Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita is to be accepted as it is without interpretation. This was the way Arjuna accepted Bhagavad Gita. After hearing Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna told Krishna, Sarvam etad yartham manye yanmam vadvasi Keshava. Oh Krishna, I totally accept as truth and all that you have told me. So at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives Arjuna an option, right? Arjuna an option. You do what you want. I've told you all this knowledge now, right? So there is a free will. There is that element of free will that Krishna has given us as well. But if we accept this knowledge as the truth, which we should, then we develop that faith. That's how we develop that faith, right? One process in that. So we learn about the stages here of how we develop faith in this um, um, process of bhakti, in that, right? The stages of bhakti. So the first stage is shraddha, or faith. Faith is required for taking action, right? Faith is a dynamic process that evolves with time, practice, and engagement. Shraddha is a jumping off point from which all other stages of bhakti develop with that, right? So I'm sure all of you have your own story, and devotees usually like to hear from each other. How did you come into Krishna consciousness, right? Oftentimes people ask that question to each other when you are part of an ISKCON congregation, like, okay, what's your story? I want to hear your story. Is that right? So that is what they're trying to acquire. How did you connect with the parampara? What brought you, and what was that first thing that brought you to this process of having faith, or starting with Shraddha with that, right? I mean, some people can say, yeah, a lot of people who are practicing this are from India. Of course they are, but even the people from India, they may be biased, but like they may, like someone say, oh yeah, you might have an upper hand, you may be biased because you grew up in India with that, right? But even then, even though some people don't have the complete knowledge of that, right? Even people growing up in India from that perspective, that, right? So, and so this process is like the first time when you hear it and you start learning about Krishna consciousness, you start thinking about it, and usually the way this Shraddha or faith develops is because our mind, we are moving from this idea of anumana or mental speculation to more principled and logical reasoning with that, right? So on one hand, there's this mental speculation, and on the other hand, there's this logical reasoning with that, right? And so as we move from one to the other, the Shraddha or the faith starts developing. And how do we do that? Because when you're hearing in a temple, remember, so first time you went to an ISKCON temple, there probably was a lecture going on, right? Like, for example, right? And so you're hearing from this, and then even if a lot of things were like a little beyond conception at that point, or a little too heavy, right? In Shastra, there might be few things that stick with us and that make us go again the next time. And then as we go again, we learn a little more. And then someone gives the Bhagavad Gita or another book to us with that, right? And then we open it, okay, and you start reading it. And then gradually you start hearing from another authoritative leader or authority who has control of knowledge or good knowledge. Like they know the knowledge, the absolute truth, and the way how they're delivering it, right? So this process, then we, instead of speculating, of mental speculation, we start putting, oh, this is what is Bhagavad Gita is the book which teaches us the principles of life, how to read that book. Is that right? Why did Parikshit Maharaj read Bhagavatam at the end of his life and not Bhagavad Gita? Has anybody asked that question to you before? It's an interesting question, isn't it? There are all these books. Why only Bhagavatam at that time versus now Bhagavad or not Bhagavad Gita? And when is the right time to read Bhagavad Gita? At the end of life? Beginning of life? During life? Yes, go ahead, Sukanya Mataji.
Yeah, so I think Bhagavad Gita is like the life's manual and it should be read during our lifetime. But Parikshit Maharaj knew that his life was going to end and his goal was to attain the absolute truth, which is Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes, exactly, right? Very well said. Yeah, so Bhagavad Gita, if we are at the end of our life and we are reading at that point, I mean, of course, anytime you read is good, but ideally we want to read that earlier in our life, right? With that. And so that way we know the principles, we can start acquiring and implementing because it teaches the principles of how to lead a successful life. a life with righteousness, a life with dharma, with that, right? On the other hand, yeah, Parikshit Maharaj was at the end of his life. He had only 7 days, and all he wanted to hear was the glories of Krishna, with that, right? With that glories of the Supreme Personality of God, and he wanted to immerse himself in that literature, in that reading, with that. So he heard and asked those beautiful questions, with that, right? So um, that right. That doesn't mean that we should not read Bhagavatam also during our life. But there is a difference here, right? So as relating back to this idea of Shraddha, we start reading this, we start having some faith. We start developing this faith, right? So that's how it starts with this process of faith. And then there are these 9 stages of bhakti where we move from Shraddha, the next one is Sadhu Sangha, then Bhajana Kriya, then Anartha Nivriti, then Nishtha, then Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, and Prema. Okay, so these are the 9 stages of bhakti, from flimsy to fixed with that. So flimsy is like shaken, right? Oh, I know some things. Yeah, it's a good idea to do it, but I'm not too sure whether I still want to do it or not, right? Maybe, yeah, I'll go to the temple once, I'll meet people, eat prasadam, come back. Okay, I hear some things, it's good. Okay, but then on the other hand, when you start, that is in the first stage here. When you start keep going further, Nishtha is strong faith. This is like a preliminary faith. Nishtha becomes like really strong faith. As you keep moving this pipeline, right? You're now, like, someone is now at that stage. Oh, he's getting up at 4 a.m. He's getting ready to go to Mangal Aarti. This is the same person who a few years ago was just going to mingle to the temple, maybe just go there, eat prasadam, come back, right? But you see this transition in this one person, right? Over time, over the years with that, or even quickly in some instances with that, right? And so that is where you see that this is that example, from flimsy to fixed. That's right. The ultimate goal is Krishna Prema, which we all want to attain. That's right. But because of our conditioning, it is a challenge to. It's very hard to get there, right? But the process to get there is through these 9 stages. With that, right? And so we can talk about this different stages as we go along these slides. So Rupa Goswami talks about how faith develops. In the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. With that, right? So Guru Maharaj talks about his beautiful story, right? How he came into Krishna consciousness, right? That he was hungry for this. Like he had this desire. He was hungry for self-realization. Right, that what he really wanted, something above and beyond the regular material life with that, right? And so he was hankering for that knowledge. Then somebody slid a book under his door. I think one of his friends he mentions in a video. And then he started reading, and that was, I believe, the Back to Godhead magazine, one of the issues of that magazine at that time. So that's that initial preliminary desire. I'm sure we all have had that experience, that you're wanting something, and then Krishna makes that arrangement, right? Somebody or the other becomes Krishna's instrument, and he or she or they come in our life to bring this knowledge to us. This will bring us once to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. In the next stage, one becomes initiated, and by an elevated spiritual master, and under his instruction, the neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. Is that right? So actually, let's go back. I want to see. Yeah, let's go back in the stages here. So, this sadhu sangha. So once you get this initial faith, then comes sadhu sangha. Sadhu sangha means, as the word says, you start seeking the association of like-minded devotees or like-minded people with that, right? That's why we say that never leave the sadhu sangha, or never leave the association of devotees with that, right? Because it's hard to follow these principles alone. right? And every time you are in a company of devotees, they're going to keep us connected. They're going to make us strive to keep moving across or further in this pipeline to achieve Krishna Prema. With that, it's hard to do this alone, right? The next one is Bhajana Kriya, where you are wanting to hear more about Krishna Katha, you wanting to chant more with that, right? So that is that Bhajana Kriya. And of course, in this process, you also take first initiation with that. So that is happening around here between these two. Sadhu Sangha Bhajan Kriya with that, right? So first initiation, Harinam initiation, Diksha is at first step. The next one is Anartha Nivriti, which is very, very, very difficult to achieve with that, right? So we have all the Anarthas, right? Kama, Krodh, Lobh, Moha. Yeah, that's right. So like the lust, the greed, the anger, these are anarthas in that, right? So, and fleeting propensity, being able to have the power of control with that. So all these anarthas are there, and we need to gradually, nivritti means you are trying to get rid of them with that, right? So in order to get to Krishna Prema, if we still have anarthas, we can't get to this, right? This is in that sequence you're following that, right? And so this needs to happen first. And so this is where I feel once we come here, from my personal experience, and I've also heard from a lot of senior devotees that this is the stage where we spend most of our time and energies. Like, this is the reason why Guru Maharaj, often when you hear in initiation ceremony, even recently in Washington, D.C., when he was talking about, he mentioned the criticism of devotees, right? With that we should not be doing that, or when you hear it, move away from it. Or if you're not able to move away from it, do not let that internalize in you, or so that you start making assumptions of this other person based on that. Because again, remember, our senses are imperfect with that, right? We can only do that much. Yes, right? And so it just happened on Friday. I was at a sangha of devotees, and then they were talking about somebody in our temple. I wanted to leave, but it was like, I can't leave. It's an awkward situation if I leave. But what did I do? I had to hear all this. And next day, I know I'm going to see this person that they're talking about in our Saturday program at the temple, like yesterday. And I was trying so consciously to like not think of all the things that were told to me on Friday about this person, right? And it was hard to dissociate that, right? But I had to make such a conscious, diligent effort so my interactions with this person do not get affected with this, right? With that, right? It is very difficult to do that, right? Process. I'm sure you can relate to this, right? Because we start clouding ourselves, our own perceptions with that, right? Yes, the person might have done this, but we need to understand what was the actual reason they're doing. What is the context behind that they're doing, right? We only have one-sided picture. But am I supposed to mitigate the situation? No, that's not my job, right? At this point, I need to make my interactions with this person peaceful and affable and loving, and I need to do to that what I need to do to at this point, right? So I need to forget about all of that. But once you've heard all of this, it is very hard to forget it also. And so this process, that's where I'm trying to say that this is the process, this is the stage where we struggle so much with that anartha nivriti stage, with that, right? Once people master that, then the next stage is strong faith and nishtha, where whatever happens in people's life, they're like, okay, this is what Krishna wants me to do. It's fine. I'm not going to fight against it. I'm going to go with Krishna's will. There is something good that's going to come out of this. With that, right? So Ruchi is the next stage where it's like now chanting or hearing Krishna Katha, which sometimes in these earlier stages is that there is a longing for that, but of course here it is still we are in that process where that okay, when is my 16th round going to end, right? When I can go to the next thing in my life, in my day to do it, right? But his ruchi is something, even after my 16th round is done, I'm trying to like, oh, can I read this more? Or I can chant more, I can do this. I throughout 24/7, I just want to hear about Krishna with that, right? That is ruchi. Or can I, if I have deities at home, oh, I can make this for them. I can offer this prasadam, or I can stitch this kind of dress or offer this kind of garland. You're constantly thinking about that, right? That is ruchi. Whether in one way or the other, you're pleasing Krishna, that those thoughts are about Radha and Krishna only in your mind with that, right? Asakti is this detachment. So the detachment from the material world in terms of like, we're not talking about sannyas, but like for grihasthashram, but you are present in that ashram also, but at the same time you're detached with that, right? Like how you see Guru Maharaj and Guru Ma with that, right? They are in that ashram, but they're still detached with that, right? And so that is that stage of asakti with that, right? And it's a very hard thing to do with that, right? Without getting affected or without having those feelings of attachment. Bhava is right, is your emotion, right? Bhava means in Hindi emotion, right? And so that mood with that, right? And so until this time, we might be doing things, but we may not have that complete bhava also with that, right? So that bhava comes very late in the game, or like very late in the stages of bhakti with that. And then where now what you are doing is completely thinking only with that, with the full bhava that you're doing with it, right? It's no longer a duty or sense that I have to do it. This is what I want to do, and this is the mood that I'm doing. With that complete surrender, complete faith, complete love and affection with that, right? That mood. And then last stage is Krishna Prema, and that, of course, which is the highest stage of bhakti, where like the gopis are in this Krishna Prema, right? The devotees or the residents of Vrindavan are in the stage of Krishna Prema with that, right? So they are seeing Krishna as their lover, as their friend, right? With that, so that is Krishna Prema with that, right? So whatever they say, Krishna doesn't feel bad about it, but Krishna also reciprocates, because Krishna knows that they are at the highest platform of bhakti, and this is how they're exhibiting their prema to me in that rasa, that, right? So those are the stages of bhakti with that. And when that faith is very much concentrated, then one can understand Krishna. So this is talking about the beginning stages of bhakti, stages of faith with that. And then the next part here is the soul. I think maybe we can take some reflections and questions before go to the next one, and we can pick up our session of, we can complete this module in the next one, because I know this has a lot of content. So let's pause here and see if anybody has any questions or reflections that you would like to add.
Excuse me, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Vasla. Prabhu, this is different from what you are giving. I haven't had an opportunity to see the recording. How to access the recording of today's lesson?
Oh, I will post this one on, there is a YouTube channel that we have for VDA, and so I will post this on that. And then
Okay.
I'll post it, once the recording gets processed, it will get posted there on our WhatsApp
Yeah.
group.
Thank you, Prabhu, because we have done
see
a lot more today. So
Yeah, I know, that's why. Were you able to see the recording from last time?
No, Prabhu, that's what I wanted to ask you. I wrote down some things and I was looking at the module one in my laptop. I could access it. That's why I could answer the quiz questions. But I
No,
didn't have
but
access to record.
we recorded last week's session and I uploaded it on YouTube. It's working. I think others have been able to access, right?
How do you
It's there.
access that?
Not sure if
go to your
Mataji is in the
website?
same group. Mataji is there in the same group, no?
Yeah.
In the same WhatsApp chat.
Okay.
Because in that, Prabhuji has posted that recording.
Okay.
There's a YouTube link. Just click on the link and it'll take you to YouTube and you can watch it from there.
Oh, thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for clarification. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. We will. So it takes few hours for it to get processed, and then it takes some time for to upload it on YouTube. So hopefully by the end of today, we should be able to submit it. Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Sorry, Prabhu. You said in the third stage, after Sadhu Sangha, then Bhajana Kriya. After Bhajana Kriya, that's the stage of first initiation. Is that what you said, Prabhuji?
Yes, yeah.
So for first initiation, you need to do
Sadhu Sangha. Yes, so Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya, around that in between and
around that time.
That is
first, around that is the first initiation. Okay. And then after that, obviously, people go for second initiation. Means by that time they should be in prema to be in the second initiation stage. Isn't it?
No. Prema,
I'm asking too much.
whether one attains in this lifetime
we don't know.
not is a question. But
They
that
can be
should not
ambitious,
deter one from getting second initiation.
No, because you put us first initiation at stage, I'm just wondering where the second initiation would be,
Yes, second initiation can come anytime after that. Yeah. These are the stages of actual stages of bhakti with that, right? Yeah. And so the reason why we have the first initiation is there because that's the initiate is the beginning, right? That it's the beginning of bhakti with that, right? Yeah. So where you have attained, or you're in the process of attaining right knowledge from right sources and right authorities with that, and you're doing the bhajan kriya. So chanting 16 rounds is bhajan kriya with that, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And the nishtha thing, did you say about the nishtha thing about thoughts you were thinking about somebody else, but you put your mind straight into it?
Nishtha is strong faith.
Yeah. Okay.
So how the faith, the first stage is faith, right? So imagine like if I like something, I keep doing that, right? With that. So that is that initial faith that happens. Oh, I like it. I need to do this again with that, right? With that, yeah. But like if there are 10 different sweets and you like one of them, okay? So you go to a restaurant and you try these different things and you like, and then you keep going to the restaurant, you're like, oh yeah, this one is the first, I like this one only with that, right? So that's your initial, you trust that restaurant, that the sweets in this restaurant are good because whatever I've tasted is good with that, right? But then the 11th time you go, you order that one thing only that you first time you liked it. The 12th time you go, you order that first thing only. By 15th time, by 16th time, you're only ordering that one sweet that you're going. That is your strong faith. I like this and I like in this restaurant. So I'm only going to eat this one item from this restaurant.
Nice. Thank you, Prabhuji. Nice example.
Yeah. So that's the strong faith or nishtha in that. Yeah.
Prabhu, I have one thing about Shabda Praman. Shabda is like we have heard a lot of the mantras came from in our olden times scriptures. Everything was learned through Shabda only, right?
Shraddha is the first stage, yes.
No, Shabda
like,
Praman.
Shabda Praman, yes, okay, yeah. Yes. Shabda is the way you learned, right? Because in previous age where there was like how would the knowledge would transfer is the guru would teach the student, right? And the way they would teach is through their speech, and the student is hearing with that, right? So that's the shabda with that, and that's why it is you're directly hearing from the guru. There's no adulterated knowledge. There's no internet or Google to pollute it in
Okay,
between,
all right.
right?
Okay, yeah.
Or chat GPT these days.
And also, can I just add on to that, because earlier all the yugas they had so much of intelligence and they could remember, but as we go down
Yes.
these yugas, our intelligence is lost, and that is why I think Vasudeva wrote down the Puranas, because people before they could just listen and remember, but for us, even after
Remember.
writing down, we couldn't. Yes.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Good point. All right. I think we are at the end of our hour here, time. So we are going to end the lecture here. Oh, there was, yeah, some messages in the chat. Any other questions? I will post the recording hopefully by the end of today or tomorrow morning, as soon as it gets processed on that YouTube channel. But yeah, please finish your module 1. You don't have any assignment yet, right? So please finish your module 1 in the next 2 weeks if you're able to. That would be nice, so you can keep up the momentum and keep up the pace. Okay. All right. Thank you,
Prabhu,
everyone.
one
Have
question.
a good. Yes, go ahead.
Did you find out whether they have received our module 1 quiz answers?
Yes, I will find that out. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, the same MCQs, Prabhuji, if you can ask. Otherwise, I'll have to do it again.
No. It's fine. Actually, we can. I'll tag that Prabhu in the chat itself. He is part of our WhatsApp group. So I'll tag him in the chat and ask him. Okay.
Hopefully, I'll submit my reflections in a couple of days' time. It'll be done.
Before or after Radha Ashtami? So
Before.
That's good. That's a good motivation.
Before.
Yeah.
Thanks, Prabhu.
Good. All right. Very nice, everybody. Have a good rest of the Sunday and a beautiful celebration for Radha Ashtami and happy Radha Ashtami in advance. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Vaishnaveva. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, devotees. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu. Thank you.